Whether you've been laid off, see the writing on the wall, or you're still employed and seeking change. What you're feeling isn't random, it's a response to a real shift. Sometimes the shift can be internal, and sometimes the shift is external. The important thing for you to know is you're not alone, you're not crazy. If you're here, you're early, you're not late. And if this is something that you're experiencing, you're in the right place. What's your path forward? Three paths forward when traditional employment is in question. Today, we're going to take a look at how to start evaluating things and seeing the signs, what changes at this stage, how people misread this stage, the three pathways, and how to choose your path. Let's start with evaluate the situation. Does any of this apply to you? You've been laid off, watched other people get laid off, you're feeling exposed, your trust and stability is shaken. The important thing to understand is displacement doesn't always mean losing a job. Sometimes it's losing certainty. What does this mean? There are people that may still have their job, but they don't feel like they have job security. If you're watching other people get laid off and you have people in the office telling you, don't worry, that's them, it has nothing to do with you, but you know that situation well enough to know that that wasn't someone that was laid off due to poor performance. They were laid off due to scaling back. Scale backs, cutting corners, and letting go of people that they feel are people that they can afford to let go of is something that doesn't really build confidence in the employees that are still left over. That's something that can leave you feeling exposed. That's something that can make you start questioning how comfortable can you be in your actual position. And then are the people that have actually been laid off. Sometimes you get walked into the room and you kind of saw it coming. And then there are times where you've been walked into the room and you didn't see it coming and you were completely blindsided. This episode and this walkthrough is showing you how to be able to evaluate the signs and evaluate the situation so that you know how to be intentional when you start to see them. If you've been displaced, the pressure compounds. Every day you're not generating income is a problem. Let's be honest. If you've ever been on unemployment, you understand that it's a fraction of what your check was. And you have to figure out how to be able to stretch that to be able to cover the most important bills. And then you're relying on your savings to be able to cover everything else. This leads to your savings draining, your resume gap grows, your confidence erodes, and your options narrow. The point to being intentional is to be able to identify what your options are before they start to narrow due to bills increasing and you not having the money to be able to exercise those actual options. Confidence erodes when you find yourself unemployed and you're sending out resumes. Let's say you send out 50 and you don't hear back from 30 of them or 40 of them. And the ones you do hear back from give you a response like, we went in a different direction. Or you open up the email and the first thing that you see is unfortunately. They don't explain why they went in a different direction. They just said that you didn't get the job. This increases your resume gap. This is the conversation that you end up having when you go in on interviews. And they say, well, what have you been doing since the last time you were employed? You have to have an answer for that. And you have to have a plan to be able to answer that question reasonably. Because the default that a lot of people share as a response is, well, I've been interviewing. And interviewing is just another way of saying I've had conversations with people that chose not to choose me. And that can drastically change how people have that conversation with you going forward. It goes from people wanting to learn your experience and your expertise to trying to identify why other people passed on. You feel exposed and trust is shaken. When you start to get that feeling like I've seen this movie before, it starts to make you ask questions. Am I being paranoid? Do I need to start looking for something new? Can I trust spending any money? How do I get out ahead of this? In some cases, you're not being paranoid. If you see people getting laid off and it's not based on their job performance or things that you've seen them actually do wrong, then it can be that they're cutting corners. They're looking for ways to be able to save money. And sometimes being laid off has nothing to do with your job performance. It has something to do with management, leadership, and their ability to be able to stay in the business without cutting the corners of the people that they value more in those situations. Do I need to start looking for something new? It's a preventative measure, but it's one you have to be intentional with and you really have to think through so that you can be strategic about it. Because in some cases, it seems like an internal conversation, but there are external observations. And by that, I mean, you may think that you're looking for a new position and you're being stealth about it, but people can see when you start getting calls and you lower your voice, or you start checking your phone for emails instead of using your business email. Things that may seem like they're out of character are things that start to surface patterns. And as someone that specializes in pattern recognition, I can tell you that these things stand out. And for the managers that are trained to be able to keep an eye on things like this, those are things that are going to stand out to them as well. On the other side of that, I can tell you what it looks like to other employers. If you haven't been laid off and you're taking preventative measures, but you're saying they haven't told me that there's a problem, they're not telling me that I have anything to worry about, but I'm looking at problems happening within the company and it looks like they're struggling. So I feel like it's a great time for me to be able to look for something new. How that can come across to the new employer is you're someone that jumps ships when things get tough. And that's not necessarily an endearing character. It says that they may not be able to trust you, even if you have the expertise. If things get tough there, you may leave and leave them hanging as well. Can I trust spending any money? This is something that tends to affect people's personal life more than their professional, because in your personal life, that's where you start to scale back and say, you know what, we can't take that vacation. We can't buy that right now. And when the answer isn't something that they're used to, the follow-up question is, well, why? And if you say, well, people are starting to get laid off at work, that gives people anxiety and stress and makes people start to feel pressure that they have no control over and have no real understanding of because they're not there to see what you're seeing. All they know is that you're cutting back and you're scaling back on things that they grow accustomed to. So being intentional and being strategic about it is something that makes sense. Should you be spending money? Most likely not. But doing it in a way that doesn't cost you that level of peace is something different than doing something where you're just doing your due diligence. How do I get out ahead of this? In some cases, that is to start to scale back on your spending. Maybe you don't take that vacation. Maybe you do decide, okay, instead of making that big purchase, we're going to scale back and we're going to put that offer right now. Better to wait until you make sure that you know that that check's coming in than to do something and then find yourself without it. I can tell you as an example, I know that I worked with someone and they knew they were going to let that person go and they let them go off on vacation. He went overseas, he spent a lot of money, and when he came back, they let him go. To me, that was deplorable because you knew how much money he was going to end up spending. He talked about it. He said all the things that he was going to do while he was on vacation. If he knew that he was going to get laid off, he wouldn't have taken that vacation and he would have scaled back and he would have been in a position where he had more of a runway to allow himself to be able to find another job. So, yes, take preventative measures, but do it strategically. Once trust is shaken and pressure sets in, people don't stop moving. They just move in different ways. And more than not, it's in ways that feel safe. So let's take a look at what happens at this stage. Here's what most people do next. They start cutting back on spending. We've covered that. They start quietly looking for new opportunities. And they start searching for new things to learn as a coping mechanism. Let's go back over it again. When you start cutting back on spending, you start to increase the level of anxiety, pressure, and stress that people in your personal life start to experience. Some people are going to experience it and say, you know what, I feel bad for the person. Let me cut back on things that I know that I would have asked them. And it may happen without you even knowing, but it's adding extra pressure and things to other people's to-do list because they see what you're going through. In other cases, you may have children, and your children don't know to not ask for those things. All they know is that you're telling them no. So, yes, most people are going to start to scale back on how much they're spending. Then there are the people that are quietly looking for new opportunities. Once again, if you are looking for a new opportunity and you think you're being stealth about it, you have to recognize that people that you work with that are paying attention know your characteristics, know what your routine is. When you break up your routine and people are in a position where they're starting to scale back and looking for people to be able to cut loose, it's almost like volunteering in a way. If you're saying, you know what, I'm going to jump ship, and it's not something where you are a necessity, then you may actually be moving yourself to the front of the line. So, yes, you should actually start to exercise looking at what your opportunities are. Sometimes the opportunities are staying within the company and just making sure that your job is secure in a way by asking the right questions. I see so and so is being laid off. I see this department is struggling. Are we on the revenue side of generating revenue for the company? Am I a necessity? Or am I something where it's after the purchase and it may be something where they feel like they can scale back? When you can answer those types of questions, then it gives you a certain level of runway and a certain level of understanding based on what the company may view it as. There are salespeople that they normally hold on to, but account managers may end up getting let go because if they can't generate the revenue, then they don't necessarily need the account managers to manage those accounts. When people start to research new things to learn as a coping mechanism, my pushback on this is it's okay to learn new things, but when you find yourself on the brink of unemployment or actually unemployed, sometimes learning new things is counterproductive. What you technically should be doing is learning how to be able to repackage the things that you already know. If you're entering into a new arena that you don't have that level of expertise in, then you're opening yourself up to needing a longer runway to get up to speed. This stage is where people confuse learning new skills with getting ready and confuse busy work with making progress. So today, what we're going to cover is why this time things are different, how pressure changes decision making, the common reactions people mistake for progress, and why understanding this stage comes before choosing a path. The productivity trap. Effort feels productive. You're researching, watching tutorials, taking courses, asking AI what to learn next. All of these things feel like you're being productive in a situation when things start to feel out of your control. Let me control what I can control. There's nothing wrong with exercising your options and checking a survey of the actual landscape, but it has to be done with things that are going to lead to results. If you're doing something just to be doing it, just to feel productive, just to feel like you're empowering yourself and you're learning something new, when your runway is something that only allows you to be able to leverage what you're already good at, then that's not something that is helping you. That's a distraction. So researching, watching tutorials, taking courses, if you're taking a course to be able to get a certification that allows you to be able to get that next step when you're interviewing to say, well, I'm qualified in this. This allows me to be able to add something to what I'm already doing. Nothing wrong with that at all. My pushback is there are a lot of gurus out here that are saying all you have to do is there's more options than ever. And they're leading people to go down new pathways that they may not understand the nuance of. Similarly, asking AI what to learn next. AI is missing the context. And if you can't articulate the context, it's just going to give you some random general information that is giving everyone else. And that opens the door for you to enter into a competitive market without the context, the know-how, and the runway that you need to be able to be successful at it. From progress to pressure. What started off feeling like progress begins to feel like procrastination. Maybe not in your eyes, but from the perspective of those watching. That shift increases anxiety and adds pressure to figure things out faster. When you start to see the writing on the wall, or you start to see signs that something's off, there's a certain level of, I got to control what I can control, that starts to kick in. And people start feeling like, okay, well, I have to make some kind of progress. And then they rush into doing more and more and more. But if they're not effective with it, it's a distraction. In some cases, people are just going to say, you know what? I got to double down. I got to dig my heels in and I'm just going to hope for the best. That busy work that you were doing, it may feel like you're making progress, but in the eyes of other people, it may seem like procrastination. The people in your personal life that you said you can't take that vacation, you can't buy that thing that you promised that now all of a sudden you can't do anymore. Those are things that may change how people view your situation. If you knew that this was coming up, what are you doing about it? If you can't articulate what it is that you're doing and get that buy-in, then that's something that's going to create anxiety. That's going to add pressure for you to feel like you have to figure things out faster. And that leads to panic, and panic leads to poor decisions. How people misread this stage. Mistake number one, chasing trending skills. People think at this stage it's about preparation. So they learn AI, copywriting, whatever YouTube says is hot. Right now, one of the things that really stands out is AI. There are a lot of people that are going to AI to get all their answers. And the reality is, AI is something that checks for patterns. It checks history and is giving you basic ideas, information, and sharing insights based on what it's seeing from the masses. What you're really trying to do when you're in a position of trying to find new employment or trying to find that next step for yourself is you should be looking for things that are going to be a differentiator. So if you're not providing AI with the context of how to be able to separate yourself from the masses, what you're really signing up to do is to compete with thousands of people who got the same advice. If you're going to YouTube and looking for what people are saying is hot, this is something that people may make sound easier than it is. If you don't have the context of what that person's situation was when they went into that new career or that thing that they're saying all you have to do is, then you're setting yourself up for failure or for struggles or for challenges that you may not be aware of. There's blind spots in that. The gurus that are out here saying that all you have to do is, and there's more opportunities than ever, it's not a lie. It's just missing the context. Someone that says, I made 7 figures in 6 months, or I can help you generate 50 leads in 48 hours, or things like that. These are things that are meant to be able to help you get clicks, or rather help them get clicks. But you have to make sure that what it is that they're promising or what they're saying they accomplish is something that aligns with what you can accomplish. A lot of times, by the time someone productizes something or they're creating an offering, it's something that they've tested not just with themselves, but other people. And by the time they share it with the world, it's not an original thought anymore. It's something that other people have tried. So when you're entering into this new trend or this new thing that they're saying, you're going into a room full of people and you're trying to figure out how to stand out. Mistake number two, treating activity as insurance. People assume if they stay busy, they're staying safe. If they're researching, they're being responsible. If they're preparing, they're protecting. Being busy feels like insurance, but it doesn't actually protect you. Let's unpack this a bit more. Let's say you're still employed. If you stay busy, you're staying safe. Not necessarily. Doubling down on doing more work, if someone's already considering you on the chopping block, is just one more reason for that person to say, you could have been doing this before, but now all of a sudden you're trying to do more. That doesn't necessarily save your job. In some cases, it can actually burn you out. And then by the time you get walked into that room and they're telling you that they're letting you go or there's layoffs, it's not a job that you were going to be able to save. That energy, that focus, all of that extra effort could have been put towards something and being more strategic and figuring out where you are and what's the next best step for yourself. Some people are researching and they're thinking that's allowing them to be responsible. Let's be honest. Some people are actually doing that research for new jobs and new opportunities on the computer that the company owns. Or they'll see you on your phone researching things and you're intentionally not using the computer that the company owns. That's a telltale sign that something's going on and you're being secretive and covert. So you think that you're creating an insurance, but you're actually putting a spotlight on yourself in these situations. The next one, if they're preparing, they're protecting. Preparation isn't necessarily always protecting. You have to make sure that you're being intentional and strategic about making sure that you're putting yourself in a position to get the results that you're looking for. Preparation is just that. It's preparing for what could possibly happen, preparing for what you could potentially be doing. It's not guaranteeing progress. It's not guaranteeing protection. It's just saying I'm taking the steps to be able to hope that things work out for the best. So again, being busy feels like insurance, but it doesn't actually protect you. What protects you is having a real grasp of what your situation is and then making conscious choices about how you're going to be able to deal with that situation. Mistake 3, going through the motions. When pressure rises, it's easy to stay busy instead of staying intentional. We want to show ourselves and others that we're making an effort to quiet the noise. The problem isn't effort, it's effort without alignment. Without a clear direction, even good actions can work against you. Let's say you feel like your job is on the line and you start submitting resumes to 50 other places. What happens if the people that you work with actually know someone at that company that you submitted your resume for? If you were trying to keep it stealth and someone says, hold on for a second, I see one of the people that reports to you actually submitted a resume. What's going on over there? That's a conversation that could be had that you aren't aware of. And it opens you up to not only not getting that job, but putting a job that you have at risk. Then there's just going through the motions in general. In some cases, you can just go, you know what, as long as I stay busy, as long as I keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing, I'll be fine. That's what supervisors, that's what some managers tell you, but it's not really up to them. If the word comes down from on high, from leadership and the business owner, and they say, listen, we have to cut corners, we have to figure out how we're going to scale back to be able to maintain keeping the lights on and the doors open, it's not always going to be about whether you stayed busy. It's going to be about whether they feel like they can afford to let you go. And if they feel like they can afford to let you go, then they will. So the question becomes, when you find yourself in those situations, am I someone that's generating revenue or I'm on the side of managing the revenue that comes in? Because if someone is having business struggles and revenue problems, chances are they're going to hold on to the salespeople. But if you're the person that comes after the sale, there's a limit to how many people they need to hold on to. If you're part of the after the investment, then you really want to start to consider what your next move is going to be and whether they see you as someone that's valuable or someone that's replaceable. So without clear direction, even good actions can work against you. You have to understand what your situation is so that you can figure out how to be able to make the next move the best move. The 3 pathways. The 3 pathways are pretty straightforward. There's the consulting bridge, portfolio career, and full-time entrepreneurship. I'll give you a quick overview of each one. The consulting bridge is for the people that know that they would prefer to be employees. They don't want the pressure of owning a business or running a business. What they prefer is to be able to just go in, take care of the tasks that they're being assigned, and know that they have a check coming in that they can rely on, for the most part. The consulting bridge part kicks in where if you're someone that's been laid off and you find yourself trying to get into another job and work with another employer, you have to do something to bridge the gap in between when you were last employed and this new employer. So if you go into a job interview and they ask you what you've been doing since you were laid off, and you say, well, I've just been interviewing. Again, that comes back to someone changing the whole tone of the conversation. And it goes from someone being interested in your expertise and your experience to, so you haven't taken any initiative. You tell me that you've spoken to multiple people and they've all turned you away. The question goes from being about your experience and expertise to why did these people turn you away? And it changes the tone of the conversation and it goes in 2 different directions. One, they start asking questions about why those people turned you away. Or 2, you run into someone that's more predatory and they're saying, well, now I want to gauge your level of desperation. because maybe what I can do is bring you in for your level of experience and expertise, but I can get you at a cheaper rate. So when you do get the job or they start making the offer, they may offer you and lowball you on the salary based on the fact that they know you're desperate enough, you've been out long enough that you may say, you know what, instead of making that 120 to 150,000 that I was making, they may offer you 95. You want to put yourself in a position where you're interviewing from a place of power. You're not just being interviewed, you're interviewing them as well. The consulting bridge allows you to be able to bridge that gap and walk into that interview from a position of power. What have you been doing since you've been laid off? Well, I've been doing consulting work. I've been leveraging my expertise and my experience so that I can not only pay bills, but I can keep my skills sharp. That shows you've taken initiative. That shows that you're doing the things that allow you to be of value. And it makes people focus back on your expertise and your experience rather than how long you've been out. Portfolio career is somewhat of middle ground. It's where you aren't necessarily an employee, but you're not necessarily running out into full-time in entrepreneurship. It's where you gather 5 to 8 clients and you have that recurring revenue. You know that you're going to be partnering with those people and it's an ongoing project and you're offering your services and you know that you've picked something that that person's not going to need as a one-off, but something that's ongoing. So portfolio careers is not relying on one check. It's allowing you to be able to rely on multiple checks to be able to match that one check that you were getting before or exceed it. And entrepreneurship is the most known when it comes to considering consulting portfolio careers and then going full time. Entrepreneurship is actually jumping with both feet. It's going into, I'm just going to focus on being able to build out a business idea. I've got a business idea. I've got a business model. Here's how I know it's going to be successful. And if I am successful, I'm going to be able to build this up and scale it into something where it's not going to be just me. It's not going to be something where I'm doing all the work. At some point, I'll be able to outsource or hire people and grow this business into something where instead of working with 5 to 8 clients, I'm going to be able to work with 20, 30 or more and build out the business into something that can really be built up and potentially sold off if you want to. Summary and next steps. This stage asks you to do 3 things. Recognize what you already know, not what you need to learn. Don't allow the pressure to lead you into busy work without purpose and results. And avoid making the common mistakes that set you back and break your confidence. Key takeaways. 3 pathways exist: the consulting bridge, portfolio career, and entrepreneurship. Another takeaway that I want you to consider is personal circumstances dictate professional decisions. If you head into pursuing professional opportunities without thinking about your personal circumstances, and I don't mean just, I got bills to pay, but what it's going to look like if you take a job for less money just to be able to pay those initial bills. What happens after you pay those bills? Are you working at a job that's going to require you to work more hours? Because where you may have gotten a job to pay the bills, now you're still leaning on the person in your life to pick up the kids, to take on some more of the heavy lifting because you took on a job that doesn't leave room for you to be able to grow. You took on a job to be able to pay the bills and deal with that current situation without thinking about what happens after that situation is addressed. Panic and busy work is wasted effort that breaks confidence. If you're someone that's sending out 50 resumes and you're sending it to jobs that don't necessarily fit, but it's close enough so that you don't feel like you're setting yourself up for failure, but you know enough to question whether or not it's a job you're qualified for, then that's busy work. And it's not necessarily effort that's going to bring in results. And you're setting yourself up for potential failure and something that can break your confidence. Yes, it's important to be able to get resumes out. Yes, it's important to be able to try to take steps so that you can control the things that you can control. But if you're doing it without purpose and without being intentional about the results that you know that you're going to be able to deliver by making that effort, then you're wasting that time and effort when you could be doing something that's actually going to help you get where you want to be able to go. Avoid the common mistakes that can set you back further than doing nothing at all. Busy work that doesn't breed results is not something that helps you make progress. It's something that sets you back. You have to make sure that whatever it is that you're putting your time and your focus towards is something that is a conscious decision that you can actually map out and say, here's why I'm doing it, and here's what I expect to be able to come out of it as a result. You're not just doing that for yourself, you're doing it for the people in your life. Because when you can explain it and when you can get that buy-in from them, then it allows you to be able to get the support that you need to build back up that confidence and make sure that you don't feel that same level of pressure, anxiety, and feel like you have to figure things out faster. Next steps. Now that you understand the stage, the goal isn't to move faster, it's to move with intention. The next step isn't choosing a path, it's getting orientated before you choose. Make sure that you understand where you're at, your surrounding circumstances, what you need to be able to accomplish, because that's what's going to help you figure out what your options are. So it's not just about finding out how to be able to cover your next bill. It's about understanding what happens after you cover that bill. Am I going to be taking a job where I'm just taking it just to be able to cover a paycheck? What happens to cover a bill? What happens after you cover that bill? What happens after you cover the next couple of bills? And you get to the point where you're like, okay, now that I don't have that hanging over my head, now I need to start figuring out what my next move is going to be. If you've taken a job that was less than, then you're putting yourself in a position where you may have to leave that job. Then you can do that once, you can do it twice. But once people start looking at your resume and they start seeing that you jump from job to job to job, then it starts to make you look like you're not a reliable person. And then that's just one more question that you have to answer when you're out there looking for a job. So in the next episodes, we're going to walk through what you already have that creates value, how risk and urgency affects decisions, and what each pathway actually requires and doesn't require. The sequence exists so that you don't rush into the wrong moves and that you can be very intentional about what you're doing and that you can articulate it to the people in your life that matter most. Choosing your starting point. If you want clarity sooner, I advise you to take the What's Your Path Forward assessment. This is going to help you identify which path makes sense for you based on where you are. It's designed to help you understand which stage you're in, see which pathway fits your current reality, and avoid forcing decisions before you're ready. This isn't a commitment, it's a starting point. You don't need certainty yet, you just need direction. There are some people that avoid taking these types of assessments because they already have the answers. They're just avoiding asking the questions because once you ask the question, then you can't say that you didn't know. In this case, if you know that you're in a position where you don't have that job security and you just want to kind of stick your head in the sand, chances are that What's Your Path Forward assessment is going to be something that you want to take because it's going to answer the questions. It's going to help you figure out what the potential path forward looks like and what you would need to be able to do in order to accomplish it. I hope you found this helpful. If you have, like, share, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you in the upcoming episodes and walking you through what the pathways look like and the different definitions of success. I'll see you next time.